Let's welcome Mr. David Wallerstein.
Hi. Well, there's the moon. You see the moon on the slide? A few generations ago, human beings decided we want to send other humans to the moon. And to reach this goal of landing humans on the moon, we had to build all kinds of amazing technologies, from rockets, space suits, to life support systems, all for the purpose of reaching the moon. We call this a moonshot. Often when we do new technology investing, we call it a moonshot. But there's something very important to remember about this concept, is that the mission is the most important thing. And then you build technologies to realize the mission. So what should be the moonshot of our generation? All of us in this room, including those young children I just mentioned that are here. How should we think about this? How do we think about what is the most important challenge for all of us on Earth right now? It's a big question. We can look at broad trends of what's happening on our planet. We have around 7.6 billion people on the planet today. Look how fast that population has grown in 100 years. And it's going to reach, according to the current forecast, about 10 billion by 2050. To scale, to have more and more humans on the planet, we have to grow our architecture. But the problem that we're facing today is the architectures we're using are not the right architectures for this situation. Technologies that were discovered 50 or 100 years ago may have had a different effect on the planet then than they have now when we go further and further increasing our numbers. So what's the outcome of this? We can look at many different indicators, how we're polluting our environment, how we're changing the very atmosphere of Earth to do the things that we want to do. Some scientists are recognizing that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now is the highest it's been in 15 million years. So we heard a little bit about time travel earlier today. Well, if you're interested in time travel, you're in for an interesting time on Earth because you're experiencing an atmosphere that we've only seen 15 million years ago. And look how quickly we're doing this. Look how quickly we're changing the atmospheric composition of the planet just in 50 years on this graph here. So what do we see as a result? We keep breaking records in so many different areas around the planet. Hong Kong, Philippines, South China had its biggest hurricane in history this year, as an example. Maybe some of you were there in Hong Kong. There's been about 125 documented hurricane-related events this year on Earth alone, many records being broken. Then we have droughts. Cape Town came very close to experiencing something called day zero. Maybe some of you aren't familiar with the concept of day zero, but that's when there's no more water flowing through the town. When you turn on the tap for water to come out, nothing comes out because there simply isn't enough water in the town. And many people in Cape Town were in lines to get water from certain centers, water centers. There's about 200 in town waiting in lines to get water. We have many friends, actually, in Cape Town that went through this. If you look at parts of the world that we would consider to be cold and wet with beautiful forests like Sweden, Sweden had heat waves and droughts and wildfires, something they had never experienced before. You just look around the world and we can point to these events. But somehow it feels a little bit difficult for us to understand what's going on. And it's almost like we're in this car looking outside, watching our planet changing around us, and kind of not sure what to do about it. It's kind of like just trying to go about our daily work, trying to do the things we want to do every day. But when we look outside and we look at the news, the information coming in almost becomes too much to ignore. So what are we going to do about this? What I want to talk about today is how do we create a new architecture for doing what we need to do on Earth. There are so many different solutions, and we need to encourage more and more solutions of all types. We need to encourage great ideas that we never thought about, to figure out how to scale to larger and larger human populations. But I want to talk about one area that I'm particularly excited about. How do we apply we first of all have to define the mission. What is the most important area for us to apply this technology? And I'm going to argue, I want to create a new word today, if it's possible. FEW, food, energy, and water, I would argue, are the most important areas where we must get this right. We all depend on food, energy, and water to survive. And trying to meet our needs in this area is the greatest cause of climate change today. And the interesting thing is that these three areas are actually intricately related to each other. They have a relationship, and I'm going to show you how they're related. FEW is the key to our future. Let me just show an example from a country like Saudi Arabia, a very hot environment, desert-like environment. Roughly 50% of the water available in Saudi Arabia comes from a process called desalination. You basically add energy, and you have filtration, membranes, and a process where you create fresh water from salt water. Once we have the water in Saudi Arabia, they use about 75% of it there for agriculture, to grow food, like we're talking about. The second biggest application of water is for power generation. Why do you use water for power generation? Because if you use certain types of processes, like oil burns, it creates heat. Heat becomes water, it applies to water, it becomes water vapor, turns a turbine, and you have electrons. And then 20% of the power in Saudi Arabia goes back to the desalination. You see how there's this related circle. You can see it in a country like Saudi Arabia. Let's talk about my home country, the United States, and how water is used there. You can see about 40% applies to this thermoelectric power process there. Again, applying fossil fuels to water usage, and then almost the same amount to agriculture. So when we very carefully use water at home and don't let too much come through the taps, we're definitely all making a contribution to the challenge, but it's actually kind of small in the scale of the other things in the country, in a nation, that are affecting the overall water resource. And in this is a challenge for all of us here because we feel helpless to affect the problem, but there's huge upside when we apply technologies that can solve some of the dynamics at play here. I just wanted to show a slide about how can you have so much water in the United States going towards electricity production. So you see all these areas on the graph here. They're all related to, again, burning something and then creating water vapor, whether it's coal or gas, nuclear even, so on and so forth. So that's how you get that big number. Okay. So what's the challenge with these dynamics that I was just showing? The challenge is that bodies of water on Earth are shifting. And we know this from very powerful research being done by NASA and JPL. This is about the GRACE study here, where you can see how bodies of water, masses of water, are shifting over time on Earth. The red areas are those where this is a study going from 2002, and this data goes up to 2016. The red areas is where you've actually seen reductions in water availability on Earth in those areas. And the blue areas is where water has been increasing. And this is a steady process that we're seeing and is forecasted to continue with significant consequences, both due to human activity as well as factors related to climate change. You have both things coming into play at the same time. So to combat these areas, there are many solutions that are going to be important, but I want to argue that the topic that people in China and other countries around the world are so excited about, artificial intelligence, can actually play a very significant role to solve these problems. But we're not going to get there. We're not going to have artificial intelligence play this role unless we actively develop the technology to solve them. This is why, again, I want to refer to that moonshot and the need to create technologies to address. So I want to talk about the impact of artificial intelligence in these areas. The goal, when you apply artificial intelligence, is to maximize your output, maximize your productivity, and minimize the inputs of resources to the process. And of course, discover any problems in your process, discover ways to optimize. Let's look at a few examples how different companies now are applying artificial intelligence in these areas and some ideas how this technology can be developed for the future. Let's look first at outdoor agriculture. One of our partners has been applying artificial intelligence to outdoor agriculture for a few years now, and we've been looking at the results from this year's harvest, 2018. We saw in the US Midwest, which is kind of the core area where corn is grown, that they achieved 40% reduction in the use of water while still increasing the yield from the harvest. And we calculated that if they applied this solution to all corn in the Midwest, so one type of crop, corn, in one area in the US, the Midwest, if they applied it to this crop in that area, they would have saved about 4 months of the annual household usage of water in the entire country. It's absolutely fascinating. When you see a solution like this, you just feel like you have to deploy it once you know it works. I would love to see this company grow as fast as possible. When we look at another type of crop, like the almond harvest in Australia, again, they achieved significant savings, all while making the operations more profitable. And in that country, just by focusing on almonds alone, covering roughly half the almond crop of the nation, they saved about 2 weeks of domestic water usage in Australia. So imagine the impact of these kinds of technologies when you're optimizing processes, you're optimizing inputs, and maximizing output, how much you can save to reduce those frictions and those challenges that I was talking about in advance. This almost becomes essential now for us to deploy. And something I want to emphasize a few times in this talk is what's so exciting about artificial intelligence is that it can happen almost overnight. Almost within a few weeks, you get access to data, your artificial intelligence algorithms. This actually isn't even roboticized. This is actually providing suggestions to human beings who control actuators. You can just imagine if processes are more automated, how much more productivity you can get. So this is just still early days, but we still have fantastic results. So we've been inspired by what we've been seeing in outdoor agriculture. And we started thinking on our side with my team and my colleagues, what if we applied this to indoor farming, greenhouses? And there's been spectacular progress made in boosting productivity in greenhouses. What I'm showing you here are pictures of a video of our cooperation with a fantastic university in Europe called Wageningen University in the Netherlands, sometimes known as WUR. And we designed a competition to see which artificial intelligence can grow food best in a greenhouse. And doing that with a human reference group. I think they're competing with each other. There's some people saying that the humans aren't putting everything they got into it, but I think they're doing a very nice job. Some of the best horticulturalists in the world are making those plants grow. They're growing cucumbers. And this competition has been going for around 2 months now, and it's going to go till the end of December. Think about the AI competitions you've heard about regarding gaming, maybe chess. Have you heard of this before? AlphaGo, this kind of stuff? Well, in this competition, we wanted to show that AI can grow food better than humans. It's a question we have. Can it? Because when we realize that, it's very clear what the benefit is. This technology can feed us better than ourselves. So what's the result so far? We just released it a day or two ago. I wasn't supposed to show this until maybe yesterday or the day before. I just want to explain what this graph is here. What you're seeing, we calculate the competition in terms of net profit. What's really important is that you maximize the output with having the minimum input. So you just don't want to grow as much food as possible if you're wasting energy, you're wasting water. You want to minimize those while maximizing the output. And so you see net profit here. That's a really essential metric. And you see these different lines. So how is the AI doing versus the humans? That white line there is the human line. I'm so happy to see this. It was just an idea of ours a few months ago. And we designed a project. I honestly didn't know what to expect. And now we see 3 teams already outperforming the human reference group. I think this is a breakthrough that we can all get excited about if you like to eat. How's Tencent doing? Okay, I didn't mention Tencent is one of the teams competing. We actually had to go through a rigorous process. Tencent was accepted as one of the teams, even though we're the sponsor. I was a little nervous to see how we would do, to be honest, because there's no guarantee we'd perform well. But we are doing pretty good. We've got some tough competition, and we've got another 5 weeks to go. So it'd be great if we can all see, does this hold? But already, the results are really exciting. And it's only the beginning. We've also been working with partners in areas such as water utilities. And one of our partners has spectacular results in this area as well. Also in the early days of introducing this kind of technology to improve the processes of creating fresh water, saving on energy costs, reducing CO2 emissions, resulting in greater profitability, avoiding problems. The actuation is still done manually. This is providing advice using artificial intelligence to the operators of the plant. It's not even automated yet. And you see just fantastic results already. Very exciting. And these kind of results can be achieved introducing this technology within weeks or months, depending on how quickly the two sides work together and provide data. So we started thinking, what if you could similarly apply artificial intelligence in the way that we've already seen it working very well to power plants? Now, some of you may not like to see this slide because many of us would prefer that we could move quickly away from the traditional polluting, CO2 emitting sources of energy. But the truth is we have coal-fired plants all over the world. I showed you the US graph. How do we deal with that? Well, I would say we have an obligation, if we're going to use these sources, to be as efficient as possible we can with them. Reduce the amount of coal we use to create heat. That's all it's doing. It's burning to make heat. Reduce the amount of water we need. We see how much water is used in these processes. Reduce the amount of steam you need to create to turn those turbines. And reduce the amount you need to do cooling. Maximize the amount of electrons coming out, the amount of electricity we have to use. This is just good business sense. This is how you generate profits. I'm mentioning this now not because Tencent has a product here or because we invested in a company. To be quite honest, we don't. We've just identified the opportunity, and we're so excited to find a teams, people in the world working on this. I'm talking about this because I think it's a major opportunity for humanity, and we'd be really interested to learn more about teams working on this or doing a competition like we did with Wageningen in the Netherlands. So I throw that out there today for some brilliant people, maybe some of the young people in the audience. You might be wiser than all of us old guys. So if we can apply AI for few and do it properly and ensure we're getting the gains we want, it helps us ensure a sustainable future. Now, some of you may be wondering, okay, what is Tencent doing for artificial intelligence? And as you know, Tencent is a company, we've been focused on consumer services now for 20 years. It's our 20th year anniversary. We've built services to connect people, entertainment services, information services, and we're very focused on individuals. That's why we have a deep passion. We're building AI in many areas, but we have a deep passion for building AI in the area of health care. It's really about extending that value, that concern we have for people, the passion we have for being part of a user's lifestyle. When you apply artificial intelligence in the health area, there's so much value that can come out of it if we do it right. We can identify tumors earlier, cancer. We can synthesize vast amounts of data to understand, to diagnose problems better for individuals, and if necessary, recommend a more accurate treatment. Everything from heart conditions, brain conditions, eye disorders. We can do this and much more. It's just in the very early days of applying artificial intelligence in these areas. Think about a rural area or parts of the world where expertise doesn't exist, but you have imaging technology. You can get access to a degree of data, perhaps even through low-cost diagnostics, another area that we're passionate about. This is a way to ensure that we can provide more and more information to users at the lowest possible cost, the greatest amount of insight to have the greatest possible impact. So we're very excited about this area. How do we move forward? We all need to work together. This is something that you typically say at the end of a speech. But I truly believe this is important here. And I would like to emphasize policymakers, because to be quite honest, these areas are not the most popular areas in technology development today. AI for water utilities, it's a new area. And there's a lot of questions out there in the venture community or with entrepreneurs. Should I be targeting this when it's so hard to work with a water utility? I just mentioned power utilities. It seems like that might be the most impossible part of the economy to work with. No offense to our friends in the power industry who might be here today. But I think policymakers, even though you may not understand the technology well, you may not understand how the AI works exactly, you know what the priorities are. That's what you do really well. You can understand the importance of boosting agricultural productivity, or saving water, or using less coal. And you can help provide incentives to the market to ensure that technologies are being developed to meet those demands. And once there's projects, and there's revenues, and there's engagement, then the venture capitalists will come to support these areas because they'll see growth and they'll see promise. And you get this positive cycle going. And of course, we need entrepreneurs willing to take the risks in the first place, because it can be scary and really difficult building a company, as many of you know here. So we need to work together. The greatest moonshot of our time is for us to build a resilient architecture for humans on Earth. It requires us to do things differently. Doing things differently requires courage. It's scary. You're actually, by definition, doing something that you didn't do before. It's not the habit. You have to realize that you're in the car looking at the hills burning around you, like that image I showed earlier. It sometimes feels safer just to keep driving and ignoring everything, but it gets to a point when you can't ignore it, and you can say, how can I get involved? What could I do differently? Do I have a role to play? Or do I just depend on other people to play a role? What I want to encourage everyone is to have that courage. We want to make a change. We want to do things better. And the opportunity to do it is right in front of us. I just mentioned these areas. They're available now. China knows artificial intelligence. It's a priority. Make the difference not only here in China, but around the world. Show the world what's possible. Let's do it together. We'd love to work with you. Let's make it happen. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, guys. We really look forward to your future achievements.